So let's talk a little about efficiency. The disturbing fact is that we've all known for a long time that efficiency was highly, highly cost effective, low cost. Low cost compared with building new power plants, low cost with building incremental transmission lines, low cost with regard to putting in broader and larger electric systems. But it simply doesn't get done very much. And what are the reasons? And the economists and lots of theory will tell you things like high initial capital cost is in many cases daunting. Lack of real consumer education and understanding is daunting. Some will say the fact that there haven't been significant economic incentives for private businesses to advance efficiency is a reason. There are the problems, the fact that people that build the houses typically don't live in them. People that own buildings of various sorts may not live in them, so they don't bear the costs of leaky buildings. Appliances, a lot of people buy appliances on the initial least cost, so they don't buy the energy efficiency ones. So what do we do about that? Well, the state of California really has done something, and it's a model worth looking at. It has its imperfections, but the differences that have been made in what California has done relative to what has been achieved elsewhere are striking and worth considering. So let me start with the bottom line of what the difference in effects has been in California. It may attract your attention further. So looking back to California taking the steps that it did in response to the oil price spikes of the 1970s, California has adopted demanding minimum energy efficiency regulations comprehensively. California has engaged utilities as the primary agents of investing in efficiency through incentives for their customers, businesses, small users, residential users. The effect of the aggregate of what California has done, which is a significantly regulation-based means of getting the job done, has been that California today, relative to 30 years ago, still has zero per capita increase in average energy usage across the state. So no increase whatsoever over 3 decades. That compares with a 40% average per capita increase in energy usage across the balance of the United States. So there may be multiple reasons for this, but certainly a very large driver of this has been this model in California. And the model has these 2 components, and I'll describe them just a little bit further. The first is California has higher minimum energy efficiency standards required by law in substantially every relevant category that can be generalized with regulations. So higher energy efficiency building codes than exist for the most part elsewhere, higher appliance efficiency standards for the most part than exist elsewhere, more recently higher fuel transportation standards, quite a new development, than exists elsewhere. California is a large state. California has taken the point of view it can do these things, and those that supply these goods will still come to the state, and that's worked. And it's worked, I would argue, substantially better than just sending price signals. So the academic debate around this is often, shall we send price signals or shall we regulate? And for some, there's a negative sense about regulation. The fact is that regulation setting minimum standards means that markets come to meet those standards at scale, and nothing is sold, nothing in the way of new goods is sold without meeting those standards. So that's step number 1. High minimum energy efficiency standards. I believe they should be increased. Interesting thing is the new Obama administration is taking a look and has said encouraging things about adopting these kinds of standards across the United States that would have a huge impact. These ought to have impacts elsewhere around the world. I believe these are applicable to developing countries just as they are applicable to developed countries, and they make a huge difference. And they don't involve the kind of responses that we get simply to price signals that are often transitory, that often fade away over time, and that in any event are very slow in having impacts. So I argue, number one, for this kind of regulation, and then number two, what may sound less obvious to most of you, and that is this practice of making the utilities responsible for and agents of making energy conservation investments for their customers through incentives. Let me describe the model in California. The first step in California was what is called decoupling, a relatively simple step. It was quite clear that the traditional utility models for earnings depend on higher electric sales or higher sales of natural gas, but whatever their product is, more money is made with higher sales. If that's the business model, a reality is utilities are not going to be the agents you want for getting this job done. They're working against the interests of their shareholders. It isn't sensible to ask them and engage them as primary stewards unless the model's changed. And it's easily changed. So oversimplifying, what was done in California is making it such that additional sales mean no additional profitability. It's quite easily done under regulation. More recently, 7 additional states in the United States have adopted this model. There's talk about doing that more broadly. So that's called decoupling. It's creating at least a neutrality for utilities with respect to undertaking energy efficiency initiatives. But it turns out utilities go way beyond that because it's so good for their customers when they work on the side of the fence with the customers to reduce their bills by introducing the customers to energy savings and then helping pay for those savings. It really works. Now, California's gone further and adopted in the last 5 or 6 years further positive incentives for searching out more efficiency measures, again done through the utilities. Very demanding, higher than the past. Goals have been set for 3-year periods for higher levels of efficiency. Utilities will make money to the extent they exceed those goals. They will lose money, that is, they will be penalized to the extent they don't achieve those goals. That's in place. The first year, 3 years is done. It's worked well, as is appropriate. The next 3-year goal has been set yet higher. And then this is in the context of 30 years already of California having tougher standards, that is, I say, 0 per capita increase in energy for 3 decades, and there's so much more that can be done. So that's the model I offer to you. I think it has application elsewhere, and it is a way of overcoming a lot of these market barriers and getting something done. Okay, that's energy efficiency. As I say, others on the panel will take you more deeply into aspects of energy efficiency. Let me turn then to forestry and soils protection in tropical countries. I've done work with an organization called Project Catalyst. Many of you will know either of Project Catalyst or of Climate Works. This is a relatively new major billion-dollar-plus foundation based in California. A big undertaking, a project of Climate Works was creating Project Catalyst to develop for all of us concerned about how we find least cost paths to mitigating climate change risks. We won't do it. We won't do it as a world unless we find the least cost means of doing that. It's daunting in any event. Project Catalyst in turn brought in McKinsey and Company, so Dr. Kreutz is going to talk with us. They work together. McKinsey's done this really fine work, I think, country by country over about 17 or 18 countries, and globally on how we get the job done at least cost.